Welcome to the Journal of Expressive Writing Open Mic. It's April 27, 2023. Jen Minotti and I, Kelly Dumar, are so pleased that you have all joined us here tonight, and we look forward to hearing from our featured writer, Lisa Lucca, as well as the 14 or so people who are going to be reading in our open mic following the reading. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Now, I am going to take a moment and invite Jen to say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the open mic tonight, the Journal of Expressive Writing. And I am so thrilled to have Lisa Lucca join us as our featured writer. I read her fabulous book, and I've known her for a little while now, and gosh, she's just amazing. And so I hope that you all enjoy the evening, and thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Jen. We would not be here without you. Jen, of course, in case any of you don't know, is the founder and editor of the Journal of Expressive Writing, and I'm just thrilled and grateful that she supports this wonderful open mic and feature process that we do. Thanks, Jen. All right. Well, one other thing I really like to do as we're opening our evenings together is to have us come together around a poem as a community. And for tonight, I have chosen, strangely, you might think, the poem Winter Morning by James Cruz. But I think that in some ways, the weather part of it could happen any day of the year. The emotional part of this poem could happen in any weather. So this is Winter Morning by James Cruz. When I can no longer say thank you for this new day and the waking into it, for the cold scrape of the kitchen chair and the ticking of the space heater glowing orange as it warms the floor near my feet, I know it's because I've been fooled again by the selfish, unruly man who lives in me and believes he deserves only safety and comfort. But if I pause, as I do now, and watch the streetlights outside flashing off one by one like old men blinking their cloudy eyes, if I listen to my tired neighbors slamming car doors hard against the morning and see the steaming coffee in their mugs, kissing chapped lips as they sip and exhale each of their worries white into the icy air around their faces, then I can remember this one life is a gift each of us was handed and told to open. Untie the bow and tear off the paper. Look inside and be grateful for whatever you find, even if it is only the scent of a tangerine that lingers on the fingers long after you've finished peeling it. So thank you, James Cruz, for that. Well, our guest tonight, Lisa Lucca, is the award-winning author of Ashes to Ink, a memoir, a story that shines a light on the challenges of living true to who we are. She's a member of the 2023 cast of the off-Broadway production of Listen to Your Mother, NYC, performing Teal Dreams, which is a passage from her book. Lisa was awarded the 2022 Literary Legacy Award from El Paso College and was named an Outstanding Woman of the Mesilla Valley for her contributions to the borderland community in literature and media. Lisa was a #blogger Voice of the Year honoree, and her work has been published in several anthologies, including the collection Crone Rising. She's co-author of the epistolary memoir, You Are Loved, with her partner, Marco Matthias, who is with us tonight as well. She and Mark share their home in the high desert of southern New Mexico, where she continues her work as a life coach and hosts a weekly public radio show, Live True, or Live True, bringing insightful and engaging interviews to her listeners about living a creative life. We will be putting links to Lisa's website and Lisa's book, where you can purchase it, in the chat room. Chat room is open. Please feel free to comment as we move along tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about Ashes to Ink before I give Lisa the mic. About Ashes to Ink, after her parents' divorce in 1974, Lisa's idyllic Midwestern childhood is shattered when she learns her father is gay. Sworn to secrecy, she begins carrying the emotions of her family like a cracked bucket, making a mess as she embarks on a life of rebellious choices. Decades later, faced with the aftermath of her father's death, Lisa revisits the complicated relationship she had with him, delving deeper into the stories she's held about love, sexuality, and the family she comes from, with a shimmering clarity that arises from her grief. A story of heartache and the power of forgiveness, Ashes to Ink shines a light on the challenges of living true to who we are. Now, one thing that Lisa has written about the book herself is, as an ally to the LGBT community, I hope my story connects with other families who've experienced this unique dynamic and brings understanding and healing to anyone who has struggled with feeling like they don't fit in. So that's what we're going to hear, part of what we're going to hear from Lisa tonight. But I did want to read one endorsement of this book by Amy Ferris. Ashes to Ink, a power punch of a book written by the glorious Lisa Lucca, filled with rage and anger and sorrow and more unleashed anger and much humor and love, human emotion in each chapter. Lisa's memoir is all about love, the wanting, the needing, the longing, the acceptance, the fear of love, the need for love. From a parent whose lifestyle flattens her to the seeking of love with men who challenge her unconsciously to finding the right one. This is a memoir about family, the down and dirty, about love, about searching and forgiveness. This book is filled with so much truth, so many untamed feelings, so much rawness, a memoir that gives you ample time to hold your breath and exhale. Read it, devour it, allow yourself to creep into the uncomfortableness. Life is filled with discomfort and unease. Lisa gives us all the rare opportunity to see ourselves in the dazzling and magnificent mirror she holds up for us. Lisa, thank you for being here tonight. We really look forward to your reading. Welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you. It's so great for everyone to be here. I'm very excited to read, but I'm more excited even to hear everyone else read. It's always wonderful to be in a community of writers and to listen to stories. So thank you, Jen, for creating this platform of the Journal for Expressive Writing. And then, of course, you, Kelly, as a wonderful host. So without further ado, I will read the prologue from Ashes to Ink, and then just a little snippet from one of the early chapters. I'll take his brains and heart, I whispered to my sister when the funeral director presented us with the ashes of our father. Half are enshrined in a plain blue box, the other half in a tube with the photo of a golf club adorning the outside. My father never golfed a day in his life. His interests were more suited to belting out show tunes and shopping for drapes. Since both Dina and I will be scattering Dad's remains, we chose between the two free temporary containers Zach's funeral home had lying around. I picked the one Dad would hate the least. Now that box sits on the coffee table where I put it yesterday after returning home. It draws my attention as I turn on the TV to chase away the quiet. When the screen flickers on, an elderly Frankie Valli appears, singing "Can't Take My Eyes Off of You," a song that flowed from the stereo in the dining room of my childhood. "He looks pretty good, Dad," I say to the box, remembering when my father performed that song in a talent show at Nippersink Resort in Wisconsin when I was 12. Handsome and confident, he sang with gusto while his biggest fans, Mom, Graham, my sister, and I, applauded from the audience. That was the summer of 1973, before I found out my father was gay. While Frankie sings, I go in the kitchen and open a bottle of Cabernet, pour myself a generous glass, then sit down on the couch. Frankie's voice is the opposite of soothing, so I turn off the TV. When the mellow effect of the wine doesn't take hold, I pull a throw blanket around me, even though it's not cold, and accept that nothing feels comforting tonight. Then I let the tears come. I will never hear my father's voice again. Memories flood in his deathbed, his death breaching a dam we constructed in recent years to keep a fragile peace. So much time spent alternating between longing for and rejecting each other. So much stubborn selfishness. He can't really be gone. And yet, here he is inside this boring blue box. Half of him anyway. Less the small amount his partner Benny will keep ensconced in a gold rose he picked out from the funeral home catalog. Even though there were many signs Dad's health was failing, the reality of his body reduced to ash startles me each time I glance at the container. It occurs to me that this plain box won't do until I scatter his ashes. A decorating diva, my flamboyant father could barely stand to see a wall with more than 12 inches of blank space. Until then, he needed something with a bit more flair. Pouring myself a second glass of wine, I slide the Fleetwood Mac Rumor CD into the player and collect scissors and a glue stick from my desk drawer, then pull a handful of magazines from a basket beside the couch and sink back down. Flipping through while Stevie sings of crystal visions, I rip out cliched words of bereavement and inspiration. Pictures of hearts and clocks are torn out along with a tampon ad filled with butterflies. Some things for my father, threshold, serenity. And some he's left behind for me, wisdom, a love that can endure. They all land in a pile on my lap. A large, colorful, feeling good gets fastened across the top of the box. To be pain-free is the thing Dad wanted most and what eluded him for the last decade of his life. So many years were focused on numbing his pain, real and imagined. As I glue each slip of paper, tears fall. Sadness and relief fill my broken heart in that peculiar way they do when someone you love dies and their freedom from pain is a blessing, no matter how hard it hurts for you. Like a ransom note, I piece together the words, "Remember, your family all love you." A message to be deciphered in the afterlife, since I'm not sure he knew this while he was living. At least not all of us loving him at the same time. Now the tears and wine are really flowing. Christine McVie sings about Daddy making her cry. "Oh, Daddy, you made me cry too," I think, then drain the last of the bottle into my glass. Letting my feelings for him soften with each stroke of the glue stick. A deep feeling of compassion settles me, as if now that he can't upset me anymore, everything between us is okay. My sticky fingers smooth the edges of the paper, and I sob, shaking loose thousands of memories of my father. An entire lifetime of joy and sorrow, inquiries and lessons, scathing tirades and tender hugs. All the secrets that broke my heart, all the resentment that broke his. I see the futility and the necessity of all of it. Flipping through the last magazine, I find the letters RIP on one page in an elegant, curvy script. An exciting find. Rest in peace. I cut them out and carefully glue them beside a purple heart for the wounds he suffered, especially those inflicted by me. So that's the prologue of the book. And then it settles back into my childhood and learning about Dad. The second short piece I'll read is just after finding out, and I'm a teenager and trying to make sense of this in the Midwest in the 70s in suburbia. Finding out my father was gay had answered some questions about their divorce, but challenged everything I knew about who my parents really were and about marriage itself. When they were a young couple, Dad left our two-bedroom Georgian home every morning for his job as a rising star in the computer world. He put on a pressed shirt, carefully ironed by my mom after she sprinkled the crisp cotton with water from a Coke bottle. Then he expertly tied the knot in front of the bathroom mirror before coming downstairs for coffee and toast. Mom was a consistent figure at the kitchen sink, washing the most recent meal's dishes or standing at the counter preparing whatever would be served on them next. The rest of the time, she cleaned and did laundry, shopped for groceries, and coffee clutch with the neighbors while we kids ran around. Their marriage modeled the cooperative managing of a household and the raising of children. Their displays of physical affection were limited to a quick kiss when Dad came in the door. They laughed a lot, seemed to have an endless list of things to talk about. They bickered a little, but didn't fight. And each night, they seemed content to watch television after supper in matching recliners while my sister and I lay on the floor, our fists tucked under our chins. I love that Rhoda has her own show, I wrote in my diary when Mary Richards' sidekick got her own spinoff. And she's getting married. Joe is such a fox. Rhoda, getting herself a husband, seemed to validate her after all that painful dating. And while it wasn't likely that she would become June Cleaver in a headscarf, she settled into a new version of herself, someone I wanted to be when I grew up. My idols from Mary Tyler Moore and That Girl were the flint that sparked the romantic fantasies of my girlhood. Even though I dreamed of a chic apartment of my own in some exciting city, the perfect backdrop for my life as a sophisticated and smart career girl looking for love, I identified more with Mary's best friend, Rhoda. Loud and curvy, a creative window dresser with a tiny bohemian apartment, often in the throes of unrequited romantic attraction. I thought my father would be like Anne Marie's, attentive and protective of his little girl, imparting his wisdom and support when she needed him. I swooned over the starry-eyed kind of love portrayed by my first crush, Davy Jones of the Monkees, whenever he looked at his dream girl of the week. No, romance I watched on television was not what I saw growing up in my house, until I noticed my father look at his boyfriend, Terry, with those stars in his eyes. This made me squirm. I had never seen him looking at Mom like that. So that's a bit from Ashes to Ink. The story really is a lot about my relationship with my father, but it truly is a woman's journey to finding herself and self-love. And that's really at the heart of this entire story. My father's passing is a part of the book. I mean, it starts out at his funeral, so we know that. I lost my mom last year. It'll be a year on Monday, on May Day. And the last piece of writing I did, which was inspired by doing Listen to Your Mother, I wanted to write, I wanted to read it tonight and give a little bit of an interesting twist after hearing a piece of my book. It's a really precious time at this moment, and I really appreciate getting the opportunity to tell this story. It's called Mayday Trinity, and I hope it grows up to be a modern love, because that's what I'm working on it for. Don't you dare die on my mother's anniversary, Ron, Ma said just before midnight on May 1st, as our family waited in the still quiet of his hospital room. Graham's was the last deathbed we had all gathered around like this 13 years earlier. My mother's gentle yet bossy tone with my dad was one she cultivated after their divorce, when they became best friends once the shock and betrayal of leaving her for a man had slowly worn off, like ink on fingers. Maybe it was easier than if he had left for another woman. No need to wonder if she had been prettier or thinner, he might have stayed. Instead, he remained her devoted supporter, a familiar source of knowledge and annoyance and love. He always loved her most. In the hours that passed before Dad took his last breath, sorrow etched new crevices into her face as the calendar turned over from May 1st to May 2nd. Ron's last acquiescence to his beloved Pat. So when Ma's declining health took a turn early last year, I remembered that night as I went back and forth to Illinois during her transition from that very same hospital to home in hospice. It's okay to let go, Ma, I said, gently stroking her hand, nearly identical to mine. So many people you love are on the other side. What do you want me to do? Just die? She laughed, her eyes liquid with humor and fear. Of course not. I mean, we just want you to know we'll be okay. We don't want you to suffer. She nodded and looked blankly into the ultimate unknown. I'm scared, Lise. I know, Ma. I wish you could live forever. Oh my God, no. I don't want to live that long. Just a little longer. Enough love to sustain me for the years I knew I would live without her. How do we reconcile letting go of the need for our mothers to stay with us as time steals their ability to move or remember or breathe? Not all of us are given loving mothers like mine, to whom being a mom meant everything. Even though she could be such a piaga, Italian for pain in the ass. Fussy about things being just so, nagging me about how I raised my kid and wore my hair, content to ask us to do things she could do herself, like clean closets, stuffed to the brim with Kleenex, toilet paper, hairspray, and a pharmacy of over-the-counter medication, mostly expired. Ma never ran out of anything, except her patience with me. I rolled my eyes at her hidden Walgreens stash, but I organized the closet because mine was an acts of service kind of mom, with a love language that needed us to take care of her, like she took care of Graham and Graham took care of Nonna, a long line of Italian women woven together by the fates, giving birth to dutiful daughters. Until I broke the thread by moving away and having a son, one who will not likely ever be cleaning my closets. Good thing Ma had a second daughter who was devoted and stayed nearby. My sister and I gladly shared the load by the time Mom was really struggling, me acting as command central and Denise as boots on the ground in the battle to keep our mother cared for and comfortable. My visit for Ma's birthday in late March had us crying in the card aisle at the grocery store, thumbing through Dear Mom cards, knowing it would be her last one. It was hard to see my strong sister so sad, knowing her daily life would change more drastically than mine when Ma was gone. When our profound grief would usher in the slightly guilty freedom that comes after surviving the loss of a parent we cared for closely. She'll be with us until the first week in May, I said later, not wanting to tempt fate, but feeling it so strongly. Like Bram and Dad, they'll be the May Day Trinity. She smiled. Maybe, but she could make it through summer. Yeah, she could, maybe. And as the chill of winter subsided, Ma rallied. She sat in the assisted living dining room with Denise on Easter, enjoying the entire meal, for she never lost her appetite. In the photo den scent, Ma's beautiful silver hair is shining like a halo over her serene face. Hopeful, I booked a flight for Mother's Day. The nurses said she could last for weeks, maybe months. She was in pretty good spirits and excited about my visit. When May Day came under an invisible new moon, I was willing to be wrong about my prophecy. Our morning call was like dozens before it. How'd you sleep, Ma? Okay, can you tell him to get me coffee? Yeah, your tray comes at 8. Oh, okay, I love you. I love you too. 2 hours later, another call, then another at noon. By then, my sister was there and Ma had taken a turn. Her oxygen's dropped. She's pretty unresponsive, Lise. Should I come? If you want me to, I'll come now. No, it's okay. You're coming Wednesday. We chatted quietly on speakerphone when out of the blue, Ma announced, "Oh, what a nice surprise!" Clear as if she had walked into a party. Is she awake? Nope. Eyes are closed, but she's smiling and she looks happy. Through the phone, I felt my mother's fear evaporate as the room filled with ancestral angels. She sees them then. They're welcoming her. My mother passed just before midnight, 22 years after her mother. It was past 12 before the hospice nurse arrived, so our parents' certificates share the same date. And as the May Day Trinity mystically reunited, ribbons of my mother's love danced around my heart like a maypole and will forever hold me in its soft embrace. Sorry, guys.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, I'm so sorry for your loss and
Thank you. Thank you.
coming up into this anniversary. Special to be here and also hard to be in that moment too.
Thank you. It feels so magical because of the fact that it was all on that same day. There's some real grace and comfort in it. You know, when it was my gram and then it was dad and it just felt like a sadder week. Now it just feels like a celebration of their life, especially since May Day is about rebirth.
Yes, it's really, really intriguing and synchronistically fascinating. Well, had your mother, Lisa, read the memoir? I'm curious about how the memoir writing and publication impacted your relationship with your mother. Like, what was that like for the two of you?
Actually, that's a great question. When I was writing the book, it was after my dad passed. He would not have been happy with some of my memories, and that was okay. He appreciated me as a writer, but my mother did not really want to be outed. A lot of her friends didn't even know that her ex-husband was gay, so it bothered her. My sister, who's also gay, was very protective of mom, and so for the 6 years serious writing of it, there were a lot of conversations until I gave them a draft. And it was very hard for my mom, but she really appreciated it. And truthfully, my sister and I had a huge healing as a result of the book. She's actually even done press with me with collage and P flags. She and I really found our way to being sisters and friends by her really seeing my world through my lens and then being able to really talk about her experience and how very different two siblings could have of the same life experience with their parents.
So you had very different experiences, but the book process eventually brought you together to be able to each share your different experience and not be in conflict about it, or maybe not be silencing each other with it.
Yeah, great understanding came. And it was really good timing too, because the book came out in at a time when during COVID, and my sister and I went through this really great healing, and it was in time for us to make decisions about mom before her moving into assisted living, and the 2 years that we spent caring for her, me from afar and her up close, would have never happened if we hadn't had that healing. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, one of the great, what was a great gift that came to you from the writing process, and instinctively you've already shared that. So that's wonderful. How about maybe the biggest challenge for you?
In publishing the story?
Yes.
First of all, the publishing process is not for sissies. It's a really challenging piece. Mark and I had self-published our book, and so I put this book out myself as well after lots of queries and lots of options, and coming very close to working with Brooke Warner, with She Writes. That was my desire, and it was COVID, and so I decided to go another direction. So that was really hard, and realizing that even though we've come a long way, even just having anything about a gay family on the jacket, it automatically eliminates some people's interest from wanting to read the story. And that's really, it's been very challenging for me to try to express how the book is about one woman's journey through her life and self-acceptance and growth, without it being about a story about a girl with a gay dad. So I think it's important that that we're very clear about what our stories are about. And I think I might have done it a little bit differently if I had known that the outcome would be that it would be so pigeonholed.
So it feels like maybe one of the biggest challenges is the publishing and the pigeonholing of your story, which feels like it's been limiting to the way it's perceived.
A little bit, but I think everybody has a story to tell, and if you have the patience and grit to sit down and write it, you need to put your story and your voice out in the world. I work with other authors, particularly with memoir. I've worked with a couple people here on the call, and I think when we release our story and we get that out of us, it's also a huge relief, and it's also really helpful, healthy, and life-changing.
Yeah, from what you're saying, I think what I hear is that the writing of it was challenging, but maybe more rewarding than challenging.
Yes.
And then we meet up with this like publishing world, and that is so frustrating because it's so sort of it's challenging and rewarding till then, and then the publishing part. How's that landed for you in terms of the choice to bring it out yourself, which is a lot of agency in that choice, in terms of saying, hey,
and that's the biggest reward, is you get to choose your title, choose your cover, write the story. But I worked with a team. I had a wonderful collection of editors over the time of writing the book, and a wonderful copy editor, and a wonderful graphic designer who I designed the book, but he made the interior and made everything beautiful. So it's important that even if you're going to put your book out yourself, that you work with really skilled people so that you have the best looking and the best produced book that you can have. But to your point, yes, so much agency. And I think that some of the people that I had talked to along the way, agents and publishers, very high up the food chain, wanted to make it, there was a salacious, like, wanting it to be bigger than it was. And I think some of our stories are stories about a family, and they don't have to have a huge splash. And finding that agent, and then the agent has to find the publisher. A huge part of my book is that I was chasing love all my life, and I decided I am no longer going to chase acceptance. And then that's exactly what I had to do with agents and publishers, was chase somebody who was going to then chase somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I decided for this particular book, that was not going to be good for me.
Because then the focus is on marketing, and then the marketing is around,
money.
What's the detail? How can we shop this in a way that it's going to trivialize it in some ways?
And sell books. That's what they care about.
Sell books, but in a way that makes it a sensational thing. And so then you ran into this whole ironic aspect of that. okay, sell your soul to go, after you've done all this work, publishing could mean, really selling out everything you just achieved. And that's not the path or the road you went down. I'm curious just to go back thematically, because I think you have given parts of the book that are very intriguing to interest people in wanting to read them. I'm curious about this idea of the family secret and what you learned about it that is a universalized aspect of the family secret. So in your family, the family secret was the unknown identity of having a gay father that was sort of lived within and unrecognized in the family for many years. And I'm just curious about what you're thinking, what is about the impact of secrets in general, beyond the specificity of that one.
Well, that's a very good question. For me, because my parents had been married for a decade plus when all of this came to light, it was the betrayal. It was the lying. I grew up with parents who, if you did something wrong and you lied about it, you got in more trouble for lying about it, right? So it was the dishonesty and all the lies that had to then be compounded to keep the secret. And I think that's the universal part of secrets in families, is that it requires such inauthenticity and it requires lies. And when you have relationships that are mired in that, it's really difficult to have intimacy, to have trust, and to not feel like you absolutely don't know that person. And that's another part of the core part of this book, is understanding our parents as people, and not really having ever thought that all the way through, and then becoming a parent and wanting to be my own person separate from motherhood is another very big theme in the book. And it really does mirror how I had to see my parents as individuals and not just my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And why do you think, what would have been different for this not to be a secret?
I may not have even existed if my father had not gotten married to a woman, because that's what he was supposed to do in the 50s.
Yes, the rigidity of those gender roles, the rigidity of heterosexuality, all of those things. In terms of the secret, I think just to wrap up this aspect of it, Lisa, I'd love to ask you, where did you and your dad, what's your sense of how you left your relationship before he died?
We were much closer at the end of his life. I come to the conclusion probably about 4 or 5 years prior, maybe even longer. I had sent him a letter forgiving him. I had come to the conclusion that he really was a very narcissistic person, and it didn't have anything to do with him being gay, all the problems that we had in our life as father and daughter. He never replied to the letter. My mother told me years later he was furious and she got him to not say anything mean. Because again, narcissistic people don't like to be called out. So I had made a choice. He was failing in his health. He had been given way too many opioids from a pain doctor over the years, and that was a problem in his life. He was so fixated on his pain, and I decided to just let everything be on the surface, that I could let go of trying to find the healing and get from him what I thought I needed, some sort of apology or I don't know, just acknowledgement of the ways in which his behavior had hurt me. And I just let it go because it seemed like the forgiveness was releasing me more than it was releasing him. And we never really discussed it. I just started calling him more and listening to him talk about his pain and letting it be all about him.
Yeah,
And
thanks
in
for
a way, it was a beautiful way for us to actually have more time through the years that these last years. And he was really enjoying reading Mark and my book. It's an epistolary memoir about our relationship, and we had him in as a beta reader, and we gave him, acknowledgement of his place in our lives. And I think that was a real gift to all of us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for circling around to that part, the forgiveness. I think you touched on so many wonderful themes. There are a couple of comments or questions in the chat room. I'm going to leave it to you to answer maybe after we're done, and you could privately answer them. There's one about the book publishing process, Lisa. So
okay. Yeah, I haven't even been at it because
maybe you could just look at that one, and I'm going to suggest to the person who posed that Lisa can look at it and share about it privately. I did want to ask you, Lisa, before we go, I'm glad you mentioned the epistolary memoir with you and Mark. That sounds really fascinating. Of course, a 10-year relationship through emails, if I understand how you described it. And it's about friendship, but I'm assuming it also was sort of culminated in a romantic relationship?
It absolutely did. Yep, we are together now. We've known each other for 40 years. We were friends for almost a decade in the Bay Area. The beginnings of our relationship and his ongoing shows up throughout Ashes to Ink. So you get the meet cute and the horror when I find out he has a girlfriend. But it is a lovely story because of the fact that our foundation has been this deep friendship, and we talk a lot about life and love and purpose and creativity and God and parenting. And so that is what our emails back and forth were about. And it led to where we are now.
Okay, so I want to encourage everybody to also check out You Are Loved, an email memoir co-written with Lisa and her partner Mark, that is on your website. And if Jen has the wherewithal, she can find that link and also put that in the chat room for you. But I also want to mention or ask you just briefly, Lisa, do you want to touch on what you did on April 1st off Broadway with the Your Mother show and the Teal Dreams? Tell us, give the audience, the listeners, a chance to just have a glimpse into another way that your memoir is living in the world.
Yes, actually, Heather Christie is our producer and director. She's here tonight to read. She's also a writer. And the show Listen to Your Mother has been in about 50 different cities and has been on for several years. It's all over the country. It's a collection of, around the same number, 14, 15 people reading about motherhood, being a mother, having a mother, losing a mother, adoption, all different kinds of stories about motherhood. And I actually wrote this piece, and I also submitted an excerpt from my book about being a brand new mother. My ex-husband and I met while we were touring with Janet Jackson, and I ran off and with a roadie and to the South in Nashville. It was kind of crazy, and got married, had this baby, and then he was off with the Rolling Stones while I was home alone with a baby. And so that piece is really
we get to hear some of the roadie stories in the email epistle.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay,
it's in Ashes to Ink. That whole time of my life, from going on the road for a year and meeting my my future husband, and it was a very exciting world to meet someone. It wasn't very realistic, but it was very exciting. And once I was home alone with a baby in the South with, no family around or any support, I had a pretty deep postpartum depression. And I was a very, very resentful new mother because of the fact that I had to do it all alone, and I was completely overwhelmed. And so I think it tells the truth about how mothers are sometimes just leveled by the amount of work and the exhaustion and the feeling like this is never going to end. And so that was what I had also submitted, and Heather chose that as one of the pieces to be read, which actually was better because I got to be honest, my sister came to New York to be in the audience, and she said, I can't sit there and have you read about Ma dying. I think I would just bawl. So it worked out perfect.
Lisa, you've really filled our ears and our minds and our hearts and sparked us up here in many, many, many ways tonight. I can't thank you enough. This is fascinating listening and reading. Jen has been putting the links to your books in the chat room. And I want to invite you to take a look at all the comments that are in the chat room and respond to them. And take a breath while we stop the recording of your beautiful feature. Thank you so much for being here and giving us a glimpse into Ashes and Ink and your life and your relationships and so much more.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. I thank you both so very much. And I really, really appreciate it. I'm very excited to hear everyone else read.
Good. Well, we'll give you a chance to say goodbye at the very end. All right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to stop the recording.